You've been speaking a second language your entire life, a language you were never taught to read, but one your subconscious understands perfectly. It's not made of letters or sounds. It's made of shapes, of geometry, of images that bypass your conscious mind and speak directly to the part of you that remembers what this world truly is. This is the hidden language of symbols, and it's everywhere. It's in architecture, in logos, in dreams, in religions. It's carved into stone and burned into brands, and though you may pass them every day without noticing, your deeper mind never misses a single one, because symbols carry frequency, meaning, power, and those who understand their true function have used them for millennia, to teach, to guide, and yes, to control. Ancient civilizations understood this well. They encoded sacred truths into geometry. The triangle was not just a shape, it was the Trinity, the ascent, the divine spark. The spiral wasn't just pretty. It was the motion of galaxies, the path of energy, the growth of all things. The eye wasn't decoration. It was awareness, perception, the witnessing force. These weren't artistic choices. They were keys to unlock aspects of the psyche that words could never reach. Because symbols aren't interpreted like language, they're felt, absorbed. They embed themselves into the subconscious, where belief, behavior, and perception are formed. That's why symbols survive, even when cultures fall. And yet something happened. The knowledge became hidden, not lost. Hidden, passed down through mystery schools, secret societies, and esoteric traditions, while the masses were taught to dismiss it as coincidence or superstition. But those in power never stopped using symbols. In fact, they became more precise with them. They placed them in government buildings, multinational logos, entertainment, currency, not to uplift, but to influence. Because they knew what the ancients knew. Symbols speak to the soul, and if you speak the right language, you can shape behavior without ever saying a word. This is why the world is filled with inverted symbols, why sacred geometry is turned into corporate branding, why ancient sigils show up in modern media. Because while most people see only an image, a triangle, a sun, a spiral, an eye, those in the know are activating deeper programs. When you see a symbol repeatedly, especially in moments of emotion, your subconscious absorbs it. It stores the frequency, and over time, it begins to shape your perception of reality. You don't know why you trust a product, why you're drawn to a politician, why you feel uneasy in a certain space, but your subconscious does. It's responding to the symbols you've been shown, without your awareness, and often without your consent. But not all symbols are manipulative. In truth, symbols are neutral. It is the intent behind their use that determines their impact. A symbol used with awareness can awaken. A symbol used with distortion can enslave. And this is the core of esoteric knowledge, the recognition that everything, even shapes, carries frequency. A circle unites, a square grounds, a triangle directs, a spiral evolves. And when you consciously engage with these forms, you begin to activate a different relationship with reality. You stop reacting. You start reading. You start noticing the symbols that surround you, not as coincidence, but as communication. The universe, after all, doesn't speak English. It speaks vibration, pattern, form, and symbols are its alphabet. That's why dreams speak in symbols, why archetypes move us, why rituals, ancient or modern, rely on form. Because your deeper self isn't logical. It's symbolic, it's mythic. It understands life not as data, but as story. And the symbols you absorb every day become part of that story. They guide your sense of meaning, purpose, fear, desire. You may not remember the words someone said, but you remember the shape of their logo, the layout of a symbol etched in stone, the geometry of a sacred site. This is not accident. It's architecture of the psyche and of the world. That's why reclaiming your awareness of symbols is revolutionary. It's the moment you stop being unconsciously influenced and start becoming a conscious decoder. You begin to ask questions. Why is this shape everywhere? Why does this image follow me? Why are ancient symbols hidden in plain sight, but never explained? And once you begin to question, you begin to see. You see the inverted pentagram in fashion, the all-seeing eye in pop culture, the false light symbolism in political branding. But you also see the genuine, the sacred, the natural geometry of life, the golden ratio in nature, the spiral of galaxies, the mandala in flowers, the resonance of sound creating form in water. And suddenly, life is not random. It is coded. Your consciousness, the very fabric of your awareness, is deeply responsive to these codes. That's why spiritual traditions use yantras, mandalas, labyrinths, and sacred symbols in their practices. Because symbols focus intention, they collapse scattered energy into form, and that form, when aligned with truth, becomes a mirror, not of illusion, but of your own divine structure, the structure that resonates with balance, coherence, and truth. When you meditate on these symbols, not as superstition, but as frequency maps, you begin to unlock inner pathways. You activate memory. You awaken capacities that language alone could never touch. This is the real reason symbols have been hidden, distorted, inverted, because those who remember how to use them, how to encode intention into form, don't need permission. They don't need hierarchy. They become sovereign transmitters, architects of energy, alchemists of perception. And that level of freedom cannot be allowed in a system that profits from unconsciousness. That's why you were taught to ignore symbolism, or worse, to fear it. But now, something in you is waking up. You're starting to notice the patterns, the repetition, the emotional charge tied to certain images. And in that noticing, you're reclaiming power. Reclaiming symbolic literacy is not about paranoia. It's about perception. It's about becoming fluent in the language that shapes the world. When you can read symbols, you can read intention. You can tell when something feels off, even if it looks positive. You can feel the distortion behind the smile. And you can choose differently. You begin to surround yourself not with symbols that drain, but symbols that resonate. You choose environments, practices, and designs that elevate. You stop consuming passively and begin engaging consciously, and your life begins to reflect that clarity. Because here's the truth. You are a symbol. Your name, your face, your presence, all carry frequency. You are constantly transmitting, whether you know it or not. And when you become aware of the symbols within and around you, you begin to transmit with intention. You become the architect of your reality, not just in thought, but in form. So start noticing the circles, the eyes, the spirals, the keys, the gates. Ask, what am I seeing? What is it telling me? What do I feel when I see this? Don't dismiss the answers that come. They don't come from the brain. They come from the field, from memory, from the part of you that always knew how to read the language of symbols and is finally ready to speak it again.